This is breaking news.
Meghan Markle is accused of faking interviews for Ax's Spotify podcast. Meghan Markle is accused of faking interviews for Ax's Spotify podcast. Meghan Markle has been accused of faking several interviews for her Axed Archetypes podcast by industry sources who claim that the Duchess had staff members on the show conduct interviews with her guests before audio of her voice was edited into the final episode. The allegations, which come just days after it was revealed the Sussexes' $20 million deal with Spotify had been ended in a mutual agreement, were reported by podcast-focused outlet Pod News. According to the site, multiple sources have claimed that some interviews on the show were done by other staffers, with audio of 41-year-old Meghan's questions edited in afterwards. Although Pod News did not highlight any specific episodes where this might have applied, DailyMail.com has contacted representatives for Spotify and the Duchess of Sussex for comment. Meghan's 12-episode podcast featured a series of high-profile guests during its one-season run, including Mariah Carey, Serena Williams, and Mindy Kaling, the latter of whom actually shared an image of herself being interviewed by the Duchess when her episode aired. However, while Meghan may have interviewed several very high-profile guests for the audio show, this is not the first time that questions have been raised about her input into the interview process for other people who appeared on Archetypes. In August last year, podcast guest Alison Yarrow, pictured, a journalist from New York, revealed that she didn't actually speak to Meghan when being interviewed for the show, but rather a member of her production company. Alison, who appeared on an episode of the show called To Be or Not to Be, in which she explored the origin and plague of the word expletive, revealed in a social media post shared shortly after her interview was recorded that the chat had taken place with an audio producer called Farah Safarfi, sharing an image of herself in front of a sign for Gimlet, an audio production company. Alison then thanks Farah in the caption for being such an excellent interviewer. Last week, Spotify and the Sussexes' audio production company, Archewell Audio, issued a joint statement about the decision not to renew Meghan's podcast for a second season, saying that they had mutually agreed to part ways. The statement continued, "We are proud of the series we made together. Meghan and Harry reportedly signed a $20 million deal with Spotify for the project in late 2020, but insiders close to the streaming giant claimed the royal couple did not meet the productivity benchmark required to receive the full payout," the Wall Street Journal reported. Pictured, Meghan interviewing Mindy Kaling. Last week, Spotify and the Sussexes' audio production company, Archewell Audio, issued a joint statement about the decision not to renew Meghan's podcast for a second season, saying that they had mutually agreed to part ways. The statement continued, "We are proud of the series we made together. Meghan and Harry reportedly signed a $20 million deal with Spotify for the project in late 2020, but insiders close to the streaming giant claimed the royal couple did not meet the productivity benchmark required to receive the full payout," the Wall Street Journal reported. Pictured, Meghan interviewing Mindy Kaling. Bill, pictured, a sports writer who founded podcast network The Ringer and sold it to Spotify in 2020 for $200 million, went on to hit out at Harry, 38, saying that he had done a Zoom with the royal during which he says he tried to help him with a podcast idea. "I've got to get drunk one night and tell the story of the Zoom I had with Harry to try and help him with a podcast idea," he said. "It's one of my best stories." Bill has long been critical of Harry, saying last January that it was embarrassing to be affiliated with the same audio company that streamed the Sussexes' podcast. "Shoot this guy to the sun," he said, according to sports website The Big Lead. "I'm so tired of this guy. What does he bring to the table? He just whines about expletive and keeps giving interviews. Who gives expletive? Who cares about your life? You weren't even the favorite son. You live in expletive Montecito and you just sell documentaries and podcasts. And nobody cares what you have to say about anything unless you talk about the royal family and you just complain about them." Spotify has recently laid off staff and scaled back big-name talent in favor of emphasizing the creator economy. The streaming giant announced it would be laying off around 200 staff members, around 2% of their workforce, who work within their podcast teams. It cited difficulties in making podcasts profitable, despite its popularity among listeners.